We sing a song as a determined nation. And that song contains anger, it contains also determination to win what we want at the end of the day.
I am Dr. Maimoona Salim, South African born. I'm now 50 years old. I originate from a tribe called Makua tribe from Mozambique in Nampula. That's my dad. That's where my dad's from. That's my lineage. And my mom is Swati and Sotho. So she's basically South African. The language that we speak is basically called Makua. So we are very minority. We are a minority in South Africa, and that language is now slowly dwindling. My earliest memories would go right down to, I think I was 4 years old, when I had to go to nursery school. And so we used to live in our community where all the Makuas were. So as a child, you were not exposed to any other race group. And then my dad moved us to another area called Overport, where now we got exposed to the different race groups there. And it was kind of funny, because you're like, okay, you look different from them. There were Indians, and then there were coloreds, and then you see some white people. So, but it never bothered until the day, the first time I went to nursery school, and the bus would come and pick us up, and my mom, now she held my hand and she says, okay, now you need to get into the bus, and then a whole lot of children sitting there in the bus, and we all and I come in there, I'm the new person, and I greet everybody, hello, my name is, and they greet, and hello, as kids, and you're so excited. And the one girl looks at me and she says, but you are not like us. And I was like, and I looked and I said, no, I'm not like you. Then she says, yeah, you're an African, and we don't mix with Africans. And I was, what is African? She says, you are not like us, you're Africans. I was confused, And then the driver says to her, keep quiet, don't do that. And then the two girls that were sitting next to me here basically pushed me out of there and said, we don't sit next to Africans. So I had to go and sit at a corner on my own in the bus and get to school. And then again at school, I'm the only one that looks like this, the way like a black person, and everybody had long hair, light skinned, and I sat there and I was like, okay. So for me, it just said I'm different, and I don't know why I'm different. It didn't make sense. So there's one girl. So I was alone. Nobody had come to me, because that's how it is. I think I felt isolated. But there was one girl who had come to me, and she says, I want to be your friend. I like you. And so we had become friends. But when I got home, I remember my mom came to pick me up that afternoon, and she says, well, how was school? And I cried, and I said, Mommy, I don't want to be an African. And she says, what? What do you mean? I said, I don't want to be it's ugly to be an African. And she says, where did you get that? Where did you hear that? I said, the girls said I'm an African, and they don't mix with Africans. They're not supposed to with Africans? And my mom says, she keeps quiet. And I know we're strolling and going home, and we get home. And I think she did tell my dad. My dad says, listen, you are African, you live in South Africa, so you'll always be an African no matter what, where you go in the world. And you need to be proud of who you are, you know. And I said, but why? But they said to me, then I asked him, I said, why don't I have the hair? The hair is so nice and straight. And why my skin is dark and I don't have hair on my hands? And my dad says, no, because God made you beautiful. And you're beautiful. And always appreciate yourself. I said, no, I don't want to be an African. And I don't want to go to school, you know. And so I think every day he would like talk to me. You know, my dad used to travel a lot. So there's time when he traveled. And although I just had one friend at school, one. And the teacher would try and get us to be in teams. And every time we tried to get together, they would always push me aside and say, oh, you stink. Oh, you stink. And I'm like, but I had a bath. I did have my bath. And you'd say, no, you stink. Africans stink. And I would just look and start crying and sit, and I wouldn't eat. And, you know, and I just hated going to school. I just hated going to this nursery school. And going on further to living in the building, now I was much bigger. So I think I was about 6 years old. And in the building, I mean, we used to go out. Before, we used to always stay inside the house. So now we go outside to play with other kids. And I found that there was still that segregation. Some of the kids used to play with us, and some of the kids didn't play with us. And I'd say to my brother and my sister, sorry, Hafsa and Malayla, and I'd say, don't worry. We'll play with each other, you know. Let's play with each other. Don't worry about them. And it was difficult because people used to always, like, we wear, like, if you were wearing a scarf. I remember I was going to school, and the school was Islamic school. So we'll wear, you know, it's a uniform with pants and hijab. And then you're walking on the streets going to school, because we take a bus and then we jump off and we walk. And the black people in South Africa never seen black Muslims, because the black people in South Africa were never Muslims. The Muslims were Indians. So they would pull our scarf and say, umuntu lo, umuntu. I mean, this is a black person. They cannot understand why you're wearing a scarf. And they would pull our scarf out, umuntu, wenzani umuntu. You know, but why are you wearing this? Why are you wearing this? You know, and I pull my sister and my brother, and I'll walk and say, don't worry, come, let's go, we get to school. And because of the environment, the Islamic environment, they had to accept us. The kids were taught to accept us, but we were the only black children. There were Indians in the school. We were the only blacks in the school, and they had to accept us. And so there I felt kind of comfortable. I loved it. I loved going to that school because everybody played with you, everybody was with you, your best friends. You know, I had best friends, and I thought this was nice. I love just being here, and I enjoy being here. So when we come from school, you know, you had to walk and go to Islamia in the afternoon. So we'd walk as friends together, and we all hold hands. And the next thing, again, you find the black people will come, the Africans will come and say, they'd stare at me and stare at my brother, my sisters, and say, they pull us out of there and say, umuntu, funandla, umuntu, what are you doing here? It means, what are you doing here? Why are you with them? You are a black person. And I'll cry and I'll push, and then, you know, we'll fight. And then my friends will come and protect us and say, leave us alone, we are, you know, this is our sister. And, you know, we'll all fight, and we'll walk and we'll go to Islamia. And, you know, the amazing thing is that we felt so unified, you know, as kids. And that was the time where I thought, I'll think back and reflect and say, but what was wrong with those kids? The ones that were only like 4 years or 5 years. And yet, these ones were so welcoming. So I think it's also about your culture and your background, the values that parents instill in you. And then, you know, in South Africa, my dad would take us out, we'll go to different places. Things that we'd see, like, let's say, whites only. Ni blankers. It's not for blacks. And because we understand Afrikaans, I understood it. And I'd say, I say to myself, why can't we? Because we go to the park and you're not allowed to sit on a bench. You have to sit on the floor. And you're like, why can't I sit there? No, you're not allowed to. So you want to wee, you want to go to the toilet. There's no toilets, public toilets for you as a black person. It says non-whites not allowed. And like we're on the pee, we must go to the bush and we pee. Yet and then when you come to the playground where you play, you find that there's a playground for the white kids. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful lawn, green and lush. And ours would have sand and I'll say, no, we want to go there. And they say, no, you're not allowed to because you're not white. So I asked my dad, what is that? What is not white? We are non-white. I don't understand. He says, okay. So it shows. He says, you see those people? They are the white race group. And then second after that is the Indians. The Indians are the ones that you're in school with. And then thereafter is the colors. The colors, some of our family are colors, and he mentioned the names. And we are the last. We are the ones, the blacks, and we are the least a minority. And unfortunately, this is where we stand. But I said, but it's not fair but we speak English like them. We speak the language. And he says, it's just the way the apartheid government is. And I said, what is apartheid? So, now I was curious. So my dad said, okay, we'll sit down and discuss it one day. And then he traveled a lot. And I remember when he bought our house, where my parents are currently living, we were the first black people in that area. And when we got there, people now already, I think, we're okay with understanding that we're black, but they're black people who could speak English, etc. So when I went to that school, the new school, it was fine. It was okay. People, although we have, I think, about 3 or 4 black children, but we're fine. Everybody was okay. Everybody, and these were mixed cultures. So there were Tamils, Christians, Hindu. So they all accepted us, and they were not discriminatory. When you found that you go to, so my dad took us to this place where we wanted to swim, there's a pool, a public pool, beautiful public pool near the beach. And we said, oh, we want to swim. And we get there and we're excited and we put on our costumes. And my sister and I decided we're going to go into the water. As we're going close to the water, all the whites stopped swimming. And they're all shaking their heads like this, no. And I'm like, so we just jumped. As we jumped in, they all moved back and they called the police. There was a policeman walking around. And the police went to my dad and says, get your children out before I arrest them. Do not cause problem. And these people were literally splashing water on us like this. Get out, kafir, get out. So that's what they call the people. They call it kafirs. 8, move 8. And then, your moss, it was just ugly. And I remember, and Hafsa was saying to my sister, says, I'm scared, they're going to drown us, let's go. So we got out of the water and my dad took us and we were in tears. So just right opposite that swimming pool was the beach. So we said, okay, Dad, let us go to the beach, we want to swim. He says, no, you cannot go to that beach, it's for whites only. We have to go to the one that says black only. And I'm like, well, oh, but why? Because this is, in my head, I'm like, but why? Because it's water from God, it's everywhere. Can you see it's the same water? So I'm not understanding. He showed me the sign, he says, see, it says whites only, no non-whites. So I said, okay. So we eventually had to drive a distance, and then we got to the ocean where it was for black people. And I must say it was empty. It was dirty, didn't look as nice and as welcoming as, inviting as this one. So I just felt like this is unfair. I remember in my head, I used to always think about it. At times at night, I used to go and start crying, and I said, when I grow up, I want to change everything. I'm going to change it. I'm going to make sure that everybody comes together as one, and everybody lives under one. In fact, I don't understand why we're all different colors. Why did God create us differently? And that was the question I asked my dad. I said, why are we all? He says, God created us the darkest because we are the most beautiful. And I'm like, oh, okay. He says, yes, and be proud of it. And I'm like, yes. And he says, that's why you're Islam and you're Muslim, because Allah is the greatest. And He created this beautiful earth. There's so much other things you can admire and love. And then I felt a lot of pain. I think I was the only one, probably my sister would remember, have these memories, because we were one of the bigger ones. And all those things were always in my head and played in my head growing up. And I felt like, we're living this life of, I was in between. I don't know who I was really, because you go to a place, you go to school, and people say you're not part of them or you're not with them, and then you don't fit into the white society because you are dark, and then you don't speak the African language because you are Makua. And I always call myself, I used to say, oh, I'm from the lost tribe, because nobody knows us, and we called ourselves the lost tribe because people would not understand who we were, and because of we were the minority and we're called the Makua tribe, and we're Muslim, and we could not integrate. So when they did the Group Areas Act, so my dad would tell us that they were living in a place called the Bluff, and the Bluff is a predominantly white area. It's one of the most beautiful sought after lands in South Africa. And when the Group Areas Act came out in 1957, they all had beautiful bungalows, like beautiful houses with big rooms and stuff like that, with my grandfather and my grandmother with the 8 kids. So trucks came one day when they instituted that Group Areas Act. The next day, trucks came, filled up those trucks with the people and the furniture. This is our community. And they had the most beautiful furniture, like the mbuya wood, and and they could not take all their furniture. And then they had come a 4-bedroomed house, bungalow. They took him to this place called Chatsworth Unit 2. Two-room house with 8 children, with all this furniture. You don't know where to put them. It was a day that it was raining. The things got messed. They got drenched, and they just allocated all the houses to them and said, your family is going to stay here. This family is going to stay on this road. This family is going to stay on this road. And they could not understand what was going on. My dad says, as a young man, he was very confused also, and he asked his dad what is going on. And his dad was the leader, and his dad says, well, the government has now said that we need to be they have to be segregated, and they were not sure where to put us, because when they went to court, my grandfather had gone to court. They said, what is your name? Like, what is your name? And he says, my name is Talib Salim Mlaponi. Say, Mlaponi? What is that? Labane, what is that? And then he says, that is my tribe, where I come from. And then he said, okay, we're changing it to Tinambo. We can't pronounce it, so they changed his name. So most of the families were carrying names in our community. The name was given by the government, not that it's a family name. And so they said, okay, name everybody that's your family so that we allocate the houses to them. And my grandfather says, so where are you going to put us? Where are we going to stay? He says, we're going to put you in Amlazi because you're an African, you're a kafir. And my grandfather says, no, but we are Muslims. We only eat halal, because apparently they were offered some food and the meat, and none of them touched the meat. They just said, no, we can't eat this meat. They said, why? It's meat. He says, no, because we do a certain way, we're Muslim. So they said, okay, the Muslims that we know are Indians, so this is where we're going to put you. They put us in Chatsworth. But now some of our family because of the mixed Arab in our family, some of them had straight hair. So what they would do, they would put the pencil through the hair. If the pencil falls, it means that they are Indian. If the pencil somehow just goes halfway, then they mean that they are colored. If it does not move, you are black. So some of our family had to go to Wentworth, where they were colored. Some of our families had to go to the Indian areas, Phoenix and Chatsworth. And then some of our families who were very dark, or they put them in Amlazi and the commercial. That's where it was this thing, black townships. And the black townships were very disadvantaged because they didn't have the proper schools, they didn't have lights, they didn't have water, and at least we were still fine because we still had light and water, and my grandfather, in fact, they had light and water. So the challenge with them is that they always did not have enough room for the kids. So they had to make the kids sleep in the lounge and in the kitchen, because they, from a four-room house or bedroom house, you go into a two-room house. And every time they would come and check on them and make sure that everybody was there, it would be like a roll call for them to check it. Okay, all the kids are here, everybody's here. And then there was something called the dom pass. So the dom pass is, if you are working and you're working, you have to go into a white area and you're working, you need to carry your dom pass, like your passport or your ID. And if you don't carry your dom pass, you'll be taken to jail. So you always had to carry your dom pass on you. And my dad says that, I remember, because he had to start working at a young age when his dad passed on, and he was working for a white family at the Bluff, because the school that they had to go to was there.
De boom als het wiel. Ambulance is met ja, wanneer? Ik kan niet wat op kringen met boom. Waarom moet ik nou water krijgen, maar van zo'n beetje? De boom als het wiel. Ja, jy lê stil man, jy's dood. Welkom in die hemel in.
The police would come now and find him there, and they would start beating him. What is he doing there? Until, if the family were not there, they would beat him. But when the family were there, they would say no. So such an extent, the family had to go and apply to the government to say, allow this man to be here because we are taking care of him, and we're making, he works for us and he does the gardening, whatever. So eventually he was allowed. So that's when the police got used to him. And then he says that's when he decided he wants to become a policeman, because he says whatever is being done to them, he wants to make sure that it's stopped. We had no classification as the Makuas. So we are Makua, as I said, a minority. So when they said, okay, there's the Indian, there's a white, there's Indian, there's colored, and there's African. So you people, we don't know who you are. So we're going to call you because you somehow, your religion and stuff is like Indian, and some of you look like Indian. So we're going to call you the other Asiatic group, the fifth race, called the other Asiatic group. And people do not know that it actually exists. Even some of the other South Africans would not be able to even tell you that. And I remember my birth certificate would say the other Asiatic group. It still says, I still have it today, it says the other Asiatic group. So yeah, that was my memories and stories that my dad had told us during when I was growing up. And I must say, it was painful but good lessons, and I'm glad I had gone through it because it taught me a lot and lots of learnings from it, and appreciation. And I started to appreciate being black more than ever. you know. And I think in South Africa, we still have that reverse apartheid now, because when we had got our freedom in 1994 and Mandela was released and Mandela became president and the whole country was in jubilation, and then the black man decided now it's the white time to oppress the white man. And you know, they did have the truth and reconciliation where there was time to forgive and let go, but not everybody would do that. And you still feel that discrimination, especially as a black woman, black female. And the discrimination being that you apply for a job, or you go somewhere and you're looking for a job, and they look at you and they say, oh, but you are, what are you? Because you don't sound like an African, but you look a bit different. So what are you? And then I say, no, I'm African, but I'm Makua. And they say, okay. So, and then, you know, you can see the confusion in people's face when it comes to us, because they're not sure where to classify us or where to put us. And when it comes to also when you're working in an environment where there's a lot of male dominated, and this is the environment I worked at, it was difficult because I would feel the discrimination, because a lot of the people, like the managers, were white. Majority managers were white. I think I was the first black manager at an organization called Edcon. I'm talking about on that level, at the store level. And it was so discriminatory. You could feel it. You could just feel it. Like they would always, you sit in a meeting, and you know, and in the boardroom, and they will be talking amongst themselves. You want to give your opinion, and everybody ignores you, and nobody's listening. Because, well, and that's the question. You know, there were women there, maybe 2 or 3 white women. So I think it was more of black, and then also being a woman, but more of being black. So every time you would speak, everybody else will speak on top of their voice, and nobody will hear you. So I always felt like I was in the back foot. I had to try harder. I had to push very hard, more than colleagues, to try and make a point or do something, because I was discriminated against. And but I said, that's not going to stop me. I'll get to where I need to get to, and make sure, because at the end of the day, it's my country, and I'm proud to be South African, and I'm going to fight through this. And no matter what, they can't discriminate against me, because at the end of the day, it's about how good are you at what you do, and not what the color of your skin and or your gender, for that matter. It was hard work over the years. At first, I was very unhappy. I used to just think, why this is happening all over again? But this was on a different level. This is on a corporate level, you know, and you still feel it. And majority, you find they are white males. So one thing South Africa did right is when they instituted the BE code, Black Economic Empowerment Code, where in higher positions there'll be more now opportunities for black males and black females, and then Indians, etc. So it did the reverse. Again, it was the reverse apartheid, and white male were slowly taken out of the system. So that helped a bit for us to rise in the ranks and become who we are in our careers. However, you still felt that stigma. But you know, South Africa will always feel it, because if you go to places like Cape Town, it's predominantly white, and it's evident in your face. If you are black and you do not have money, they look down upon you. And there are places in Cape Town where you go to and there's only whites. You will never find a black person living there. They even make sure, if it's an estate, you will not find one black person in that estate. They'll only allow white people. The government is trying to fight it, but you know, if it's it's owned by private, you know, entities, they can do what they will like. So there are restaurants where you walk into and people turn and look at you and say, "What are you doing here?" Because it's white. Till date. And people just give it, especially in Cape Town. It's crazy. In smaller also Afrikaans towns where there's a lot of white people in the northwest, etc. They'll just look at you and be like, "What are you doing here?" And you feel out of place because it's just white people. So no matter what we want to say, discrimination will always be there. But there's a lot of learning in that. And at the end of the day, South Africa has come a long way. I think it's almost 30 years now that we're in democracy. And we do have a long way to go because we cannot fight apartheid with apartheid. Somewhere we need to level the playing field, and people need to understand that. We are all human beings. We're all here. We're as Africans in South Africa, no matter what. So you get some white people who call themselves, "I'm African." They will not say, "I'm a white person." They say, "So what are you?" Say, "No, I'm African." And they're proud because they're born in South Africa. The funny thing is, though, that the coloreds who are close to the black people, the African people, they are lighter skinned, some of them, they would not. So, the different race groups will be on a piece of paper or somewhere, and they say white and African. Those are the only two now. So people, what you call it, the coloreds will not say they're African. They don't want to admit they're African. They say, "No, we are coloreds," and they say that there's no more that doesn't exist. So they also discriminate against the African, and this is the colored, and it's just so shallow. You ask yourself why. So there's this little nuances that shows that apartheid is still there, and it's happening. However, it's much better. This is what we want for everybody.